Today is a special day as it's class number 50 in this deep dive. I can't believe that we're still on this journey together. And I'm not sure. I've never seen perhaps that this has been done before, where there's such an in-depth look at the afterlife. And we're still in this process of talking about the reincarnation. And so we're going to continue today our conversation on reincarnation. When it comes to reincarnation, past lives, there are exceptions to the various rules that we've spoken about. At times, a person may have done something so spiritually damaging that the only way for them to find peace in the next world is by returning to the so-called scene of the crime, descending once again into this world and repairing that which is marred. This is particularly the case with regards to issues between humans. On the other hand, if it's an issue between us and God, which is different than an issue between us and our fellow, for example, a spiritual or ritual issue, then it can be worded and worked out on a spiritual plane in the afterlife journey. So the time that we're going to come back to mend a particular issue, it's going to be a issue between us and another, not necessarily an issue between us and God. Interpersonal matters, especially monetary issues, cannot be fixed in the world of souls. So this may open up a can of worms here, but I think it's important. If money was stolen, for example, during the course of a person's life, and the thief passes away without ever returning the money, that thief will need to return again to this world and return the money to the person from whom the money was stolen. If a person steals from another, the deed is not forgiven until they actually return what was stolen. It's for this reason they will both reincarnate, and they're going to meet up, and the money will be returned to the rightful owner in a different incarnation. Whether it will be done consciously through free choice, or it may even happen by accident. Not only theft, but even owing money to another person, which means you borrowed and never repaid. That is enough to create a need for reincarnation. The reason why Kabbalah talks about this is because we want to talk about how important it is to, and how careful we must be when dealing with money matters. Now, I also want to mention at this point that if you were on the receiving end of such a transaction, which means that money was stolen from you or money's owed to you, and you feel like the other person is incapable of paying the debt, whether they literally don't have the funds, or because maybe they're crippled by their own narrative, you may want to forgive the debt and forfeit the money. Now, forgiving a debt is purely an act of piety and compassion. It's not demanded by Torah law. It's not demanded of us to forgive a debt. But ultimately, it's beneficial both in this life and in the next. Because if someone still owes you money, after both of your journeys in this life, they will need to repay you in another life. They'll have to come back, which means you will need to come back as well in order to receive those funds. So sometimes, in order not to have to go through the journey again, it's imperative to repay the debt, to forgive the debt during this lifetime. There's a spiritual principle that says, it's a Talmud from Tainit 29a. It says, the Creator causes auspicious events to occur on dates that have a history of auspicious events, and inauspicious events to occur on dates that have a history of inauspicious events. Positivity attracts more positivity. Negativity attracts negativity. Curse, Rashi says, curse cleaves to the cursed, and blessings cannot attach themselves to curse. Blessings flow, blessings follow the blessed, and curses follow the cursed. And ultimately, both the blessings and the curses are both self-defined and self-fulfilling. So we have to be extremely cautious as to how we craft narratives, how we craft identities. Negativity attracts people, it attracts ideas, it attracts events of the negative kind. Now, this is not to blame the victim. We're just acknowledging that there's a higher force in the universe, and nothing happens by accident. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we do have the power, and I would say more than the power, we even have the responsibility for our own sake, as well as others, to control our responses. I think it's necessary to point out that if something negative happens to you, you do have a choice to release it or not. Now, although at times it's beneficial to forgive, in other circumstances, when the issue maybe is an issue that's larger than you, you're actually not allowed to forgive. Reincarnation of a complete soul identity, meaning not just the returning of those unarticulated aspects of a soul, but the whole soul, is warranted when the soul is being re-embodied, and that soul was deceitful to another human being and caused another person physical or mental harm. The path along which the perpetrator of pain attains their, what we call their tikkun, their tikkun is their why can't I think of the word now?
Repair.
Their repair, thank you.
You're
Their
welcome.
repair is traveled by coming back to this sphere of reality, reenacting the scene, and then undoing that which was done or not done. Only by reliving the events and altering their outcome can that repair, can that tikkun be achieved. There was a famous Hasidic master. His name was Rabbi Dov Ber. They called him the Magid of Mezrich. He once asked his teacher was the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement. He asked him to reveal to him the secret of reincarnation. Now, the main passage in the Zohar that elaborates the mystery of reincarnation is in the portion of Mishpatim in Exodus and Shemot. And that portion speaks of monetary laws. The Zohar begins, these are the laws, which also refers to the mystery of reincarnation. Now, the Maggid wondered, what's the connection between monetary issues and the reincarnation of souls? So his master, the Baal Shem Tov, encouraged him to travel to a certain location. And he said, when he reaches a tree with a stream nearby, he should rest there until the evening. He should observe what transpires, and then he should return. Now, he was clearly instructed not to interfere or participate, but just to observe, and that's exactly what he did. He traveled to that particular location, and he sat down. Sitting there, he noticed a traveler passing by. The traveler put down his bags and rested for a bit. He ate something and before continuing on his way. When he left, the Maggid realized that the man's wallet was accidentally left behind. But the Maggid also remembered that he had been instructed not to interfere, only to observe. Along came another traveler who rested in that very same place. While lying there, the second traveler noticed the unmarked wallet. He picked it up and he put it in his own pocket and left. A few moments later, a third person came along and he just sat down to rest his tired body when along came the first person that had lost his wallet earlier. Assuming this man had found and pocketed his wallet, he asked him for the money back, for the wallet back. When the man rightfully denied any wrongdoing, he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw a wallet. The first person lost his temper and beat him. Once again, the Maggid was told not to interfere. Puzzled, the Maggid returns to his master, the Baal Shem Tov. He says, Rabbi, explain this to me. The Baal Shem Tov explains that in a previous life, the first person owed the second person the exact amount of money that was found in the wallet, but refused to pay him. When they went to their rabbi, the third person who was in this event, the rabbi callously and carelessly ruled incorrectly and did not demand that the first person pay up. Each one of them was now repaid appropriately. The person who owed the money received it back. The person who gave it back. The person who was owed gave it back. And the rabbi was hit in the face. Now, though it's a story, I want to point out that even in a predicament such as this particular story, the individual with the reincarnated soul is not enslaved, nor is that person held hostage by the past. The past is not an inevitable indicator of how life will develop and life will flow in the present. Past life experiences may impress upon or shape the direction of a person's life, but they don't completely define our destiny. We, you and I, have the power to radically transform ourselves in the moment, and the effects of such a transformation may ripple out into the future and may echo back into the past. The soul may indeed need to work out some past issues, but by doing so, the soul liberates itself profoundly, and it alters the trajectory in all directions of time, in past and present and in future. What happens then is that it gives rise, I'm trying to translate this from Hebrew, it creates the future as well as reinventing the past in light of the renewed present. The best example I can give is that movie that was very famous in the 80s, Back to the Future. When every so often he keeps on looking at the graves, at his grave, and sometimes the grave is not there and sometimes it's there, and he sees within the film that the events that are occurring today are altering his future and also altering his past. And so there's some truth in that, though, I mean, not in the way the movie describes it, but there is some truth in the process of things that we can do today have the ability to alter the past and the future. We don't have to necessarily have a story such as the one that the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid experienced. Cheryl, please.
Oh my gosh. I could have asked this question before you told the story of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. But if life in Judaism is so precious because all we want to do is preserve life, as you had said at one point, when someone said, oh, if you're on a ventilator and you're suffering and whatever, like, no, Judaism says we should preserve life and they can still live like a vegetable. Okay, so if two people have an issue that they need to resolve, but one of the people, not the abuser, but let's say the abused, you're making it sound like life isn't precious, that it's almost a difficult thing, like they're being sent back to school, but they didn't want to go to school, but they're being sent back to school to resolve whatever issue they had in the past. So, but they might live a longer life. Now, I remember you saying that babies that die early, or let's say young children, it's because they had certain things that they had to work out. They finished their work and then they went back to Hashem, or as you said last week, Adam, I guess. I'm not sure. I lose that connection also. But why do you make it sound like coming back to life is a bad thing?
So I think it's important, and it's a great question, and it's important to specify that we're not saying that coming back to life is a bad thing, but we are saying that it could be just like the story of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, that in the process of your life, you're going to have a moment that doesn't make any sense. You dropped your wallet, you came back. The guy's sitting there 5 minutes later, and you think that person has your wallet. You smack him in the face. The guy is totally innocent, yet he's not innocent because of a past life. So things happen to us. It's not that this is the whole trajectory. That was one moment in that person's life, in all the three persons' lives. One moment. And sometimes things happen. You're like, why? Why did this happen to me? Well,
okay.
this could
And
be
again, you use all money issues. Why is money more important than a person-to-person relationship that you had an issue of some sort that you could not resolve?
yes.
Then do both of those people come back as well and resolve that, maybe in a different form instead of mother-daughter, could be, temple friends or something. I mean,
It depends on how much the person, how big of a deal it is for that person. The reason why I think the Talmud and Kabbalah focus on monetary issues is because often, if you ask somebody, someone owes them money, they're going to tell you. But if you ask them, if they remember that time that that person did such and such, that you were sitting there, they may not remember it. There's something about money, and that's what the Zohar is trying to say, that it really does have an effect on us during our stay in this world, to the point where it's much harder, I think, for us to let go. People who are owed money, they don't forget it. Where I think it's much easier to forget, maybe if you had a disagreement with somebody over another matter.
okay. And that often is what breaks families apart, is when someone dies and there are money issues involved with possessions that are left behind and it's not divided equally or whatever.
Exactly. So case in point. Case in point.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yeah, more. Yeah.
I have a few, but I mean, there's Shema Lamita, which I try to say every night. Where you're constantly forgiving, like throughout the day, anyone who transgressed or you went over you. I think it's one of the most beautiful prayers.
In my opinion, Maor, it is the most beautiful prayer. If you don't know this prayer, I'll send it to you. It's the prayer that's the opening of the bedtime Shema. It's a very beautiful prayer where you ask for forgiveness for all those who have wronged you, and it's one of my it's for sure one of my favorite prayers. But more than one of my favorite prayers, I think it's the most powerful prayer. Sorry, Maor, please continue.
Yeah. So when I do that often, it makes me, when I see people get angry over stuff, I get concerned, I guess. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but I get concerned, like that it is a mitzvah to, be good to your body, to take care of yourself, and the emotions over whether someone did harm to you, that pain, that emotional reaction is harmful. And when you said it's allowed, it made me wonder why. I guess it's breaking another commandment, thou shalt not steal, from the other side. But
I want to specify by saying that I didn't say that it was allowed. It's not.
Okay.
It's not. You don't have to forgive. It's your own free will. But you just proved how valuable and how important forgiveness is. I mean, we can go into an entire deep dive just on forgiveness and the value of forgiveness. The reason why it's so important is because it's not required. It has to be done on your own free volition. And people who hold grudges, it's understood we're humans. You see, the human experience is not supposed to be perfect. Nobody asked us to come into this world to achieve perfection. We've been asked to come into this world to be better. There are some things that perhaps during our lifetime, for whatever reason, we may not be able to accomplish. Now, I'm not saying don't. We're all sitting here because this is something that's important to us. And we come back here week after week after week because this is what we value. So I think here in this room, we're speaking on a different level. So of course, we're all going to say, like, I can't understand. And I agree with you, Moa. I can't understand when people don't forgive one another. I mean, come on, life is short. Well, what are you holding on to? Yet there are people who hold on to things. And the example that Cheryl gave of families that get destroyed over inheritance, over money, is a great example. I mean, really, you just lost a beloved family member. And there they are. And I've seen it so often as a rabbi. They're in the shiva already, and they're fighting over the money.
Well, my other question, and you said there are certain transgressions that aren't forgivable. What are they? Is it a long list, short list?
We'll have to get into that. That's a deeper deep dive, but we'll get into that at some point.
Okay. Thanks.
Alessandra.
Okay, so my questions are very practical. What if you have a debt with someone that helped you at some point and you started paying them back? And while you're paying them back and you still have some payments to make, they either pass or you pass. Can your estate fix a debt?
Yes.
Because, okay, that's good. Because for instance, in succession law in most countries, if you want to get the money, you need to get the liabilities as well. So then you become responsible for somebody else's debt.
I just had a situation like this where there was someone was not well, and there was a possibility that they were not going to make it. And they came, so I don't know, for some reason people like to come to rabbis during these times in their lives. I don't know why. Amazing, right? And the questions that come up. And so they said that for the past number of years, they had borrowed money, and for the past many years, they had been paying it back, and they didn't have the money to pay it back fully, and they're very worried that if they go, that their debt will still remain in this world. And I said, I was like really, really inspired, almost crying, to think about that. Is the person's possibly, this is their last days and this is what they care about? It's a very beautiful thing. And I said, I really think you should add an addendum to your will that afterwards, that this is how much money is owed, and that they, and that if something happens to you, that you want it to be repaid from your estate. And he did. And I think it's a wonderful, just recently, and I think it's a wonderful care that is how we should care about another, because it is a big deal. And obviously the fact, he told me he's been paying back this thing monthly for about 20 years. I don't know the whole story behind it. It doesn't matter what the story was, but it was important to him to pay it back and to make sure the person gets paid back in full. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay, and in that case, you're not coming back.
In that case, you're both not coming back. Yes.
You're both not coming back.
Well, you're both not coming back for that reason.
Right, exactly. But do we, another important question is that since we're all here learning, do we carry any of this learning with us in our next life?
Oh, yes.
Or do we always start from scratch?
Oh, yes.
Because it never stops.
It's very possible that the person's purpose in this world was that learning. And the reason why that person was God was on the doorstep of God returning their soul to the Maker was because the learning had been done. And that's why, as a rabbi, I often find I have to be very sensitive, understanding there's a lot more to life than just what the eye sees. And people come to me and often they'll say, Rabbi, I have a stupid question. To which I say, there's no stupid questions. Because if it's something that's bothering you, like I'm not talking about a question that you're asking because, you just want to ask it for the sake of asking it. I'm talking about a question that's on your heart, that's bothering you. There's a reason why it's bothering you. If it's your question, there's a reason why that's your question. So it's not a stupid question. It's a very profound and powerful question. On that note, any other questions that are on your hearts? Okay. I would love any comments on what we've talked about. Have I left you speechless?
I can definitely comment, Rabbi. I thought that you'd partly addressed what I was thinking or wondering about, but I also thought it's useful to tell you this journey that I've been on today. So I started off thinking, how strange. We don't think of money as a spiritual thing. We, as you said at the start, that it's not an eternal thing. It's not, although you didn't specifically say about money, but it'd be under the category of things that are not eternal because it's man-made. It's not something that is technically real. We invent values on things, and that's kind of money. But then it occurred to me that there's two possible aspects to it. One is the evil eye or judgment. So when these things happen in these stories to these people, as in real life, we make a judgment, and it might be in the form of an evil eye. It might be like we're asking God to get retribution, even if it's subconsciously, but it's some kind of a judgment. The other aspect is that it seems to make a difference. Money makes a difference. So even though it might be a material thing, people have given today many examples of why it makes a difference, whether it be this dispute in the family or the whole of the person's life is a grudge on that issue, even if it's in the background of their mind, it's still there. And so the thought came to me, maybe money matters to us as humans, and therefore money matters to God because, and only because, it matters to his creations. So it's like a concession. Yes. Because it's what is there.
Yes. Exactly. It matters to God because it matters to us. You see, that's, Juliana, I can't describe how profound that is. Because so often we say, well, there's no intrinsic value. Yet, what creates value? We create value. If we put value on it, then it's valuable. I always wonder, I go to an art gallery. I appreciate art a bit, but not to the extent where I can understand why 4 red boxes are worth $1 million. But there are people who appreciate it, and there are people who even have that kind of money who will pay that money for the 4 red boxes. And so who decided that that's worth $1 million? And who decided that $1 million is $1 million? But we have an understanding. I mean, we can go into the depths of understanding, but money is one of those things that is a construct that really defines a lot of the world. I mean, there's so many things in our world that we need, and I'm not want, talking about things that we need, which we can only achieve with money. Now, money is a means to an ends. It's not the ends alone, and that's part of the issue. Is sometimes people take the means and make it the ends, because a lot of people, they acquire a lot of wealth, but they're not happy because it's only a means to an ends. So it's so important that we know what the value of money is, that the value of money is with that we can help, with that we can achieve our purpose in this world through connecting with others, through supporting others. So we have to remember what money is. But yes, I think what you're saying is so powerful that the fact that we care so much about it makes it valuable.
Yep. Rabbi, like at the same time, Hashem always brings the mun. And human beings do that. Like we do that all the time. Like we think it matters, but at the same time, does it? Like
But
I'm talking more in
I don't want to
terms
take
of,
away, sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah.
I don't want to take away the human experience. You see, being in this world, our purpose is not to be perfect. I can't say this enough to you.
No, but let me just say one extra thing here though, before you in the prayer, you call Yirat Hashem, comes up often. I was always wondering about that word. Yirah means like fear of God. Are we supposed to fear God? Well, it's really awe of God. But and this came up last class. Like the fear is a good thing at the beginning, so that insecurity is a good thing at the beginning. But as you gain knowledge, that knowledge is like transcendence beyond. So there's a lot of insecurity or anger around it, but at the same time, as you gain more knowledge, the perspective changes a bit.
Yes. And I think what you said, Yirah, Hebrew is such a profound language that words don't have meanings. Words have roots. What is the root of the word Yirah? Re'eh, to see.
Love that. Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks.
So we fear what we see.
Exactly.
But we may not see the whole picture.
We don't see the whole picture. We don't. That's why we have to be careful about what we fear and what we see and how we translate that.
I'm interpreting it a little different. Like it's the scene is, you're gaining deeper understanding. You're seeing more and more. I mean, you're never seeing the whole picture, but as you see more, you realize you view it differently. Like you understand it more.
Exactly. As you see more, you understand more. And that's why, for my 2-year-old.
By the way.
Yeah, exactly. For my 2-year-old, when he sees the big stairs going down, he's afraid to walk down those stairs. For you and I, we see them differently. We have no problem walking down the stairs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Alessandra.
So what about the forgiveness at Yom Kippur? If I forgive someone at Yom Kippur, why do I have to come back for somebody else's deed, for somebody else to fix their deed?
No,
If it
you
makes any
don't.
sense.
If you truly forgive them, it's your choice to forgive them. But if that forgiveness is real, you don't have to come back. Or at least for
But
not for that.
isn't forgiveness more about, and it's a question really, it's about letting go of what could have been and what it wasn't, and giving away the hope of the past being something different than what it was.
That's one part of forgiveness. There's other parts of forgiveness too.
Okay, so I forgive
If there's
somebody
a
for
person in
doing
the
something.
world, if there's a person in the world where if I say to you, or if someone says to you, oh, I invited this person over, and you say in your head, I don't want to be in the same room as that person. That person needs to be forgiven. There should be nobody on this earth that you don't want to be in the same room as.
But let's assume you forgave them. Are you not entitled to say, okay, I forgive you, but you go your way, I go my way?
Well, then that's not forgiveness. I mean, in the truest sense, we're opening up
I'm listening.
entirely. We're opening up a whole other can over here about what forgiveness is, and maybe since we're coming on to Elul soon, we're entering the month of Av just yesterday, so maybe and over the next weeks as we get into Elul and into the high holidays, we can talk a little bit more about forgiveness and what it really is. But in the truest sense, forgive and not forget is not forgiveness.
No, but hold on. You can forgive. You can still be, for instance, the father of my children, right? I've forgiven whatever our past is, taking into account that I have, but no, wait. Taking into account that I have a part of responsibility in whatever happened between him and I. We have the most amazing children together. It happens that we are in the same room. I will be in the same room, and you've seen me in the same room with the father of my children. Doesn't mean I have to live with him when I go away.
No one said you have to live with them.
Okay. No, nobody like leave going away in a sense.
But you have to be able to, if you're uncomfortable, then you didn't fully forgive.
Okay, I hear you.
There's still something to be dealt with.
Okay.
You asked me for what is the great level.
I'm listening.
I'm
That's
giving
why
you
I'm here.
I'm giving you the end without the process. There's a process to it. But that's what it is.
Okay.
Jill.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna call you on this thing. If you've forgiven somebody, then you should be able to be in the room with somebody. And like we've got extreme situations of violence. Like that seems ridiculous.
Like, why do we always go to the extremes?
Because that's like, I feel like you kind of said something that encompasses, but it could be a physical, it could be an emotional violence. And I get that. I mean, in our humanness, it is tough to just be just totally okay with it. And we have to work on that with various people. But what about those situations? I mean, obviously we need to protect ourselves. Like, so I feel like a blanket statement needs to have.
I mean, we're talking about extreme. I call these exceptions.
Even if emotional violence, like, I mean, not just physical violence.
If someone's going to be violent, that doesn't mean that you can't be in the same room. You can't be in the same room with someone because they're going to be violent towards you is different than not being in the same room because it makes you uncomfortable. Because you have some unfinished business. You understand the difference between being, somebody who you fear for your life and someone who, you just want to avoid because you're uncomfortable because you have some history with them. That's what we're talking about.
Right. I mean, and I guess there's sort of like a violence within yourself then.
That's right.
You're dealing with. I know I go to the extremes. That's just where my brain goes.
Yeah. Okay. But thank you for clarifying that, because I think maybe others probably also go to those extremes. So I appreciate you clarifying that. But I want to also point out that we often go to extremes, which is not necessarily what we should be doing, we should try to actually not be going to. I understand we want to try to find the boundaries of whatever situation we're dealing with, but the best thing to do is to go to the personal extremes and not to the theoretical extremes. Because so often we skirt the issue and avoid it by going to the extremes of life. Oh, why do bad things happen to good people? No, I don't. I know it's a very big question, but the real question is, how do I rectify those difficult things in my life? Me. How do I do the difficult work? That's the real question. And there's a big difference. And you know the people who are doing the difficult work. And you know the people who aren't. You can see it on their forehead. Pava, you had a question. You keep on raising your hand and putting it down, but what's your question / statement?
I appreciate what Julian brought up about money being, having a depth, having it be more about energetics and spirituality than just paper. I appreciated that point. My question is about charity and how charity falls into this realm of money.
How does charity fall into this realm of money? The best example I can give you is a story between Queen Victoria and Moses Montefiore. Moses Montefiore was probably one of the most philanthropic Jew of the 19th century. Today, there's probably not going to be a city where there's a Jewish community that doesn't have something that Moses Montefiore started or gave money towards. A wealthy banker from England, and because of his wealth, the taxation and the way he was taxed was very different than the usual taxation. The Queen would, every so often, or once a year, would send a request for Mr. Montefiore to give an assessment of his income of the year, and then she would decide how to tax him. It was a deal they had between the two of them. One year, she sends him a request, and when the ledger she gets back from him, she takes one look at it and says, "Liar! What a liar! I thought we were friends. What is he doing? Can't believe it. Go seize all his assets and throw him into prison till I can figure out what to do with him." A couple hours later, she asks them to take him out of prison. She says, "Moses, this is Mr. Montefiore. We're friends. Why did you lie to me?" He says to her, "My dear Queen, I did not lie to you. What I gave you in that ledger is a list of all of my charitable givings for the year. Because according to my tradition, it's only what I give to tzedakah, only what I give to charity that's truly mine. And my dear Queen, you proved my tradition correct, because in one moment you seized all my assets and threw me into prison. And when I was sitting in prison for these past few hours, all I could think about was the only money that's truly mine is the money that I give to charity." Pablo, you got the answer?
Yes. Yeah, that's a powerful story. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to our golden nuggets. I want some golden nuggets today. I'm hoping that there were some things that resonated. I know the past few weeks have been very theoretical. So today I purposely tried to find some things that would resonate so that they weren't just theoretical. We'll start with Alessandra, and then you can pass it on.
Alessandra is questioning many things. and I'm trying to think if, as Hava mentioned, we can also use. No, I'll change what I'm about to say. I remember somebody telling me one day, when you've given, you can receive. And it's like, because your hand is open, right? You just gave, your hand is open from giving, and so you can receive. And it's not about receiving back that we give. It's not for that. But when I connect it to your story with Montefiore, it's like, I've given and therefore it's mine. I don't know if it makes any sense. You point your finger?
You point your finger, you have three pointing back at you. And I say that both positive and negative. When you point, you have three fingers that are pointing back at you.
Right. But when your hand is open, it all goes towards somebody else. And at the end, it's our deeds that remain. Again, our watch, earrings, or cutlery, who cares? It can be thrown out, but it's not what we will be remembered by. But the deeds we've done to help others, or to be a better person, to forgive somebody, that's what will carry us on. So something to ponder, and I'm very interested in your forgiveness bracket into this, because I think it will be very revealing for me, certainly, and for some of us as well. So I will pass it on to Cheryl.
Thanks, Alessandra. I think I got more out of what Julian and Moar said earlier, only I didn't write them down because I was so busy listening. So I thank you two people for your input. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to this. I only have a question for you, Rabbi, and that is, if you would send that prayer that Moore was talking about. I don't know that prayer, the one before the Shema, or where I could find it.
Willing, when I send a recording for this class, I will send out the prayer with it. Thank you for reminding me. I'm making a note of it right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, how about Jenna?
Hi, Juan. I think my nugget for today is from pretty early on in class, before you told the story of the travelers, Rabbi, about not only do we harm someone else in that they will have to come back to resolve a debt if we don't address it with them, we also harm ourselves. And as someone who struggles with confrontation, I think this is something good for me to think about. I will pass it to Jill.
Thank you. Oh, I think what jumped out at me is what you said just a little while ago about, how do I do the difficult work? Something that's come up for me and pretty recently and pretty frequently is like having hard conversations with people that are close to me that I just don't want to have. I think, Jenna just said, I want to avoid conflict. I want to avoid, so you kind of, it'll pass. Time, it will allow it to pass, but it doesn't really pass. So that just jumped out. How do I really do the difficult work? How do I step into that? And how do I have those hard conversations? So that's my nugget for today. And I will pass it to Julianne.
Thank you. So I've been wondering about two things. The first is, it occurs to me that what matters to me, what I put my energy into, what I focus on or put my focus on, that determines or dictates or affects if I reincarnate. And the question becomes, how do you differentiate between how much something matters, has your energy, has your focus to merit, to result in a reincarnation, and a small example, and where does it become enough to merit reincarnation and too little not to merit it? So one example is, if the bus driver doesn't stop, I might curse the bus driver. Why haven't you stopped? And so on. Does that mean I'm going to reincarnate every time a bus driver doesn't stop for me? So that's one question I'm wondering. The other one is, it also occurred to me that there's the energy and also a flow, what we put our attention to and our focus. It's our energy and our flow that we've created, which is also in money, because money is an expression of ourselves, and also a flow in a sense, because we express ourselves through money. It's a way of us affecting the world in a way that is beyond us, but yet is still physical. And so it occurred to me also, God interacts with the world through a system of flow. The Shifa is called, which means flow, or people call it the divine flow. And the Shifa flows through the Sephirot, the 10 Sephirot, into our world. And the Sephirot are kind of container for that flow, or containers. And money is a container for our flow, our expression, just as the Sephirot are a container for God's flow or expression. And so I thought, I wonder if the way that we relate to money, or the way that money is to us, is that the same as the way that the Sephirot are to God? In other words, we can understand the Sephirot through looking at how we relate to money. Is it a parallel? Those are the two things I've been left wondering from today.
Just to answer that one thing about every time the bus doesn't stop. It's so important that we try our best to deal with stuff in this world. If it bothers you, yes. I'll give you an example, a personal example. One of the hardest things for me is that I have a lot of people that are calling me and messaging me all day. And it's very, very hard for me to get back to everyone in a timely fashion. And it bothers me tremendously. There's nothing I can do about it. But I know there are people that get upset because either I missed their message, or I wasn't able to get back in a timely way. And so if it does, I mean, I try my best to apologize when I can, but often people will hold things, and I'll hear something from someone a year or 2 or 5 later. So don't hold on to it. Nobody ever called me up at night and said, stop thinking about me. If you're up at night thinking about someone, deal with it. With that, I pass it on to Chava.
Deal with it, Abba. Two things. The first thing that really blows me away, you always have this incredible way of bringing me back down to earth, because just this idea of like owing somebody $20 and having it have the possibility of being a holographic situation of incarnations past and present is amazing. So with that, bringing me back down to earth again, I come back to the realization that I might want to, be in this grandiose place, of just amazement and wonder all the time. But it really comes down to just being here in the moment with the people I'm in the room with, and being the best version of myself that I can be, whether it's about $20 or, helping somebody out. So thank you for the reminders that I clearly need over and over again. Alana.
Thanks. I really appreciate what you just said, Chava. I don't know, my head is spinning. There were so many things, and I was distracted today, so I really do apologize. But I really kind of hold on to the idea that we have some control and power just over how we react to things. So I think that's so important in like my daily life, right? It's like how you, like the idea not to just react, but to kind of take your time and to process and to kind of weigh whatever happened. And it's so funny about this forgiveness idea, because just yesterday I was with a friend and we bumped into somebody else who I don't really know, but she knows. And my friend said, this is the only person in the world that I have not forgiven for whatever happened. And she didn't tell me what happened, which was fine. But it's just amazing that just happened yesterday. And in the past, Rabbi, we have spoken about forgiveness quite a bit, particularly just before the high holidays. So it's something that always comes back,
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think in the recording, when I send you the recording, I will send some of those recordings as well from those old forgiveness classes. It's good to think about them again.
It's so important. It's so
and I'm also thinking about how I want to do this again, and I want to revisit this time of year. It keeps on coming up this time of year, so I want to revisit it. It's so important. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mom is the only one left. Yeah.
So now that I know there's a forgiveness lesson, I may not, I don't know if I should say anything, but I'm very interested, and I keep going back to the intertwining of the two words of forgiveness and forgetting, because our brain, who we are, these things are in there. They exist in the cells, cellular memory. It's not, they're things that just don't go away. And I honestly don't think that the English language is focused, or it's not perfect on these two things, forgetting and forgiving, because I think they're so intertwined. And I can't remember who said it, but I think maybe it was Julian, about the word attention is very important, I think, in forgetting and forgiving, because if you choose to put attention on the things that you can't forget, then I don't think that you can forgive very easily. So I'm still interested in the intertwining of these words and what they actually mean. But now I know there's a tape, because I'm not really don't understand what actual forgiveness is. I know what it feels like, but I don't know what it is. And I always thought, I can forgive this person, but I don't think I can forget what happened. So did I really forgive them? TBD. So, but I will listen to that forgiveness tape, because that probably will answer some things that are on my mind.
Is it hello?
Yeah.
I wanted to share my, I guess, thoughts on this. Again, back when you said, Yira, the root of Yira is to see God. I think to see God is at the root of forgiveness. Because when a person does something hurtful or and forgiveness is called for, seeing that other person as a human being, and the God is, that person is Hashem's creation as well, and understanding that that they might be doing it from a place you don't know, you can't fully comprehend, is important, as well as your own reaction to the situation, because you yourself have emotions, and that's more in the animal soul than the seeing of Hashem. And when it comes to language in the English language, Rabbi, I had this question, and I wrote to even a publisher of a Siddur. Why do they translate Vayira Hashem as fear of God? And almost every Siddur that I pick up, I mean, that's a big question, but that's not.
I have the same question as you, Maura. One day, I have so many things that I want to get done, and one day I want to do a proper translation of the Siddur that fits in with something, because I find that it's so hard for people who don't know Hebrew to look at an English Siddur and to find that connection with God. Different conversation. There's so many things that come out of these classes. I love it, but definitely lots to explore. So to be continued next week. And for those of you who are staying for Talmud, let's start.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.